your boy Young Love, I give him that thing. Pancho leg stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Pancho leg stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, walk on your leg, Kankara, what I know watching, Oga, live leg, year, wow, very leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Banya Dwal, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda, what ya be, Dwal, venting. Stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, Pancha leg stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, walk on your leg, Kankara, what I know watching, Oga, level leg, year, wow, very leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Banya Dwal, Bano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda, year, what ya be, Dwal, venting.
Welcome to Lake State Media, everyone. For those of you who are watching Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse, would like to welcome you. Today I have a guest, Mr. Edmund Skin will talk to us about incident happened in Nimule and Mugali and the other part of the area in South Sudan. So first, before I do that, I would like to send out my condolences to those who lost their life during this incident happened. So our prayers and God with the family who lost their loved one. So this crisis, we want to also Sudanese to come together to pray and to bring this communal fight under the control. And we urge the government and local government and community cattle keepers to come together and have a peace and harmony. So this time, let me welcome my guests this evening. Mr. Yasin, welcome again to Lake State Media. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to give us an update as you just came from the on the ground where this incident happened. So give us an update. So what's happening? What's going
on? Thank you very much. And also I'd like to say thanks for hosting me in this media platform. And also I'd like to say thanks to your audience. But of course, in first place, I would like to pay condolence for the family of those who have lost their family members, loved ones, dear ones from all sides of the communities we have, from our cattle herders from Bor and various communities of indigenous or host community of Magui, the Madi, and the Choli, and other South Sudanese who might have died in this particular incident. I know that even some, as far as people from Kajukeji, were identified among those who are deceased, those who have lost their lives in this exercise of deadly raiding, which happened on the night of 11th until the morning of 12th May. So as you said, I've been on the ground. And of course, as an activist, always want to speak to facts. We don't normally speak to rumors. We need to verify for ourselves before we could share with audience. And as I speak with you, the situation in Mugali and some parts of Magui, I can't continue naming them, is not stable. Even in Nimule, the level of fear among the citizens is very high. And simply this is as a result of this recent deadly cattle raiding that has happened in Mugali and Melijo, parts of Magui County, around the Madi corridor and Acholi corridor. That's what has happened. And it have claimed lives of innocent citizens, and of course, mostly the pastoralists. And so to brief you, I would like to set some facts clear before I could go to in-depth discussion. And this simply just to help update the audience, or who may later on come with questions to answer whether the credibility of the information I'm providing or the update. So I would like to start by setting facts very clear. Facts before the incident and facts after the incident, so that when I speak to those facts, so that we can avoid blanket statements or accusations or whatever. So the facts I like to set before the incidents are as follow. The facts is that there were huge influx of cattle, mainly from our cattle herders community of Bor to Magui. And this influx, per the facts that the cattle herders have raised, is that they're escaping the floods in Jongole, and they're escaping also issues of grading that is taking place in Jongole by the Murle and the East Coast fever. So they're coming for a bit of like a safe locations. And when they came to Magui, the authorities in Magui, specifically the commissioner, plus community structures, you can name them chiefs and women leaders and youth leaders, have raised a concern that the huge influx of cattle to Magui, it may cause havoc. And I remember the commissioner used the phrase, there will be a looming violence in Magui because of the huge influx of cattle to Magui County, some parts of Magui County. And after that, what we witness is that the presence of the cattle in Magui have raised attention over the use of the land. The use of the land between pastoralists for cattle grazing and the use of the land with farmers on farming crops. So there was tension between pastoralists and farmers over the use of the land, land for grazing and land for farming or for agricultural purpose. And you know, Magui is a community that is 100% farmers. They don't keep cattle, so they need to farm. And farming in Magui also, it is not only for home consumption. Farming in Magui have reached to the level that some of the families are farming to use the agriculture produce for financing the school of their children, some other services like medical services, or even some of them save money for other rainy days that may come. So with the influx of the cattle, they feel the agricultural livelihood is under attack with the cattle. And of course, what we witness is that also the control of the cattle within the host community was not an easy, because the cattle start going to farms and start eating crops of the farmers. And also it has started, the cattle come to establish close to farm areas. That has raised the tension. And the tension that was raised is that the indigenous community have made several calls for the pastoralists who come from Jongole to return back to their home of origin, because they have seen huge influx of cattle that it's affecting their agricultural season. And that have led to the governor, Luis Lobong Lojore, to visit the cattle camps and call for harmony and call for respect of the norms and tradition of the indigenous lands by the pastoralists, and call for a peaceful coexistence among the pastoralists and the farmers. That's what Luis did. And Luis did that after when a first incident of raiding was witnessed, where there's a trading accusation between the pastoralists and the farmers. And the pastoralists were saying the raiders are coming from Nas, they were attacked under Nas. And while the leadership of Eastern Equatoria couldn't clarify it very clear, but what they say is that raiders have come to raid cattle of Denkabor, or cattle herders from Denkabor. That happened, and that followed with the visit of the governor. From that time until this incident, there were continuous regular calls for the cattle herders to leave Magui and to go to the home of origin. And those calls have reached to the level of a national government intervention. And national government have sent quite a number of delegations on the ground to will ensure that the cattle move out of Magui and go back to Bor in a safe and protected way. And that have led to the level that you can see our Honorable Minister of Information, Michael McQuay, who at the same time, it is the Bor community leader, challenging the elites of Bor that when they want to implement orders, like the order of the president for cattle to leave farm areas and go to the area of origin, McQuay have challenged elites of Bor that normally they water down that call And that call, McQuay have repeated that there's a need for the cattle to return. There are quite voices coming from the political elites of Bor that cattle should go back home because the flood have subsided. They now can go back to Bor. And of course, the way how the cattle, when they were been moving from Bor to Magui, is not equal the way how they want to go back. When they came on trucks, but now going back, they have to use footing. And the cattle herders have communicated very clear that they are ready to leave from Magui and they are ready to go to their areas of origin, but they need to move in phases. As we speak now with you, I have seen several times, I've been going to that area for many field monitoring, whether the cattle herders are moving. Yes, there are number of cattle herders who are moving already from Magui coming towards Juba, and that's why the evidence for that, you can see incidents of tension between cattle herders and communities outside Eastern Equatoria, like in Central Equatoria, the Lulubo areas like Lokelere. There were already registered incidents where tension merged between the cattle herders and the indigenous in western side of Juba town, in Lokelere in particular, and this area of Aru Junction. These are all Central Equatoria land. This witnessed the incoming of the cattle herders from Eastern Equatoria on their way to Bor through Central Equatoria, and this is sort of like an entry point of cattle when herders, when they're leaving Eastern Equatoria, going to Bor, they have to pass through this Lokelere and Aru Junction. That's done. Another fact that has been also clear is that I don't think we need to really make it as a leveling of all. Among the cattle herders, some of them have committed atrocities against the host community. What are these atrocities? Looting, harassing them, intimidating them, and these who have been registered by the host community before this violence happened. And I feel these particular incidents have been the attracting factor for even the host community to make sure that the cattle herders have to go back. But I can't accuse the host community for facilitating these deadly incidents. But I think the perpetrators of the recent incidents invested on the tension between the host community and the pastoralist. And the challenge part of it is that the government, with all the calls of the facts that I've said before the occurrence of this incident, government have not responded effectively in deploying forces to deter these kind of recent deadly incidents, which has been waged against the Bor pastoralist. I wish the government could have deployed, because early warning is in place that such imminent attacks is going to happen. So that's what would happen. So this is the facts before the incident. Now on the incident, the facts on the incidents are as follow. The people who have been killed during the incident are over 22 persons, and this including women and children, during this cattle raiding attack, and it's a deadly cattle raiding attack. That's one fact that I like to set it very clear. And also the pastoralist, I talked to some chiefs, the figure they give as a raided cattle is over 10,000 cattle were raided by the raiders, but also over 50 cattle were killed during the raiding. So they are killed, and you can see in the images, some of them are chopped, and I've seen the chopped one where the ribs are chopped like with machetes. These have been chopped, and which is a new feature in raiding, because normal raiding is that you raid the whole cattle, you don't kill some of the cattle, but there's this incident of killing the cattle. Then these have led to the displacement of huge population of the host community. In Mugali and Malijo, they have been displaced. Most of them have run to the towns for areas of displacement and have raised tension. And when this incident happened in Mugali and Malijo, the raiding which it happened, the following morning, a retaliation of the Bor community were witnessed in Nimule, in which there was a public shooting, random shooting in the town, looting of shops, and the Eastern Equatorial State government deployed police to deter that situation. 2 of the police officers who were deployed there were killed by the public uprising or reactionary public, which are mainly from community of Bor in Nimule. And that's what led, if you hear information about Nimule border point was closed for 2 days, but right now is open and is functional. Those are some of the facts that I have to set it very clear. So if you go, and as I'm on the ground, as I'm speaking with you live, the host community are consistently saying the only solution to this crisis is when the cattle herders were able to leave their land. That's where they feel the best way is. And of course, cattle herders say they're living right now, as I'm speaking with you, they're in Jebel Gordon. And if you see the message of the Dinkabor community leader, he mentioned they're in Jebel Gordon. But of course, the movement of cattle, you have to move in phases. Not all of them are in Jebel Gordon. There are some within the communities of Magui, or within the host community of Magui. In some parts, like what has happened now in Mugali, in Malijo, still there's a presence of cattle within some part of Magui, though some of them are already in Jebel Gordon on their way back to Bor. But also, some facts that I would like to put forward is that even if you're moving the cattle from Magui to Bor, the safety and protection and security of the cattle herders on their way to Bor is very important. Why? If you look at the statement of Eastern Equatorial Governor on defining the identity of the perpetrators of the recent incident, the Eastern Equatorial Governor was saying these particular perpetrators of the cattle raiding are from Murle. That's what the governor of Eastern Equatorial described in his statement. They're from Murle. Then if you see the statement of the leader of Bor community, the leader of Bor community was saying the perpetrators' identity are youth that were mobilized by leaders of Eastern Equatoria, and even Bor community leader went further as leveling Governor Luis Lobonglo Jore and the Magui commissioner and some honorables that they were behind the mobilization of the youth and arm the youth in within the communities of Eastern Equatoria to carry out that trade. That's from the angle of Bor community leader in terms of identity of perpetrators. So he blamed it's the youth of Eastern Equatoria, which were mobilized and supported by the political elites. That's what they are saying. Whilst from the angle of the Eastern Equatorial State government, they identified the raiders as Murle that have come and raided. That's what has happened. But of course, for me, what is disturbing is this, so that I can now move to update you on what I think is the solution. One thing that these incidents, the pattern are changing. The pattern is not the usual pattern that we have seen in cattle raiding. So for me, I think this still raises an alarm in terms of really question of our citizen safety and protection, because that's normally raiding, you take all the cattle, but now there's also a pattern of cattle who are being killed. And this tells you very clear that there's a frustration from the host community on the principle of peaceful coexistence. That's one thing that I like to make it very clear to your audience, to people who are following this particular debate. But also the one thing that I like to say is that the presence of the cattle herders in Magui have already impacted on food security. The agricultural season in Magui in this particular season is going to fail, or is going to be below expectation, because most of the farmers are now displaced. They're living in displaced camps in various locations within Magui County. So we are not going to witness any agricultural production. The third aspect I want to say is that what is challenging now, the relations between farmers and pastoralists across the country of South Sudan. Both farmers and pastoralists are competing on that particular piece of the land. I would like to describe the piece of the land. The piece of the land is that land within South Sudan where at least the state have capacity to provide safety and security. Maybe some of your audience will ask, South Sudan is a vast land. Why are we killing ourselves over a small land like in Magui? Why don't people go outside the farm areas and put there? The main concern is that the vast land we have, the capacity of the state to provide safety and security is limited. And that's why farmers and pastoralists are competing over that land size where the government at least have capacity to provide safety and security. So pastoralists have to be within that land, farmers have to be within that land. So this tells you what the state need to increase its capacity and capability in providing safety and security beyond, because we could have said move the pastoralists outside the farm area. Now the question, will the pastoralists have a will to move outside the farm area? My brother, my assessment is that the pastoralists have limited interest to move outside the farm area, because the farm areas are within the territory that where the state at least can provide safety and security, and they feel also they can get a quick reinforcement. So moving away to an area where they can be attacked and the state is very far and reinforcement is very far, they can't move there. While also farmers cannot go and farm very far. Farmers have to farm within that territory that I describe it as a piece of land where the state have capacity and capability to provide safety and security. Now, based on this, what should be the solutions to this crisis? An immediate solution, by what I have seen on the ground, number one, is both the state government of Eastern Equatoria and the national government have to deploy forces to deter the communities from continue clashing. Because my worry is my brothers and sisters who are audience of this particular deliberations, that the chances of a deadly revenge attack is very high. And you know very well in our cultures in South Sudan, when raiding happen like that, people have to follow the cattle that are raided. or people have to revenge on the incident of the raiding. Now, the identity of the perpetrators is disputed. Eastern Equatorial State government is saying Murle, and Jongole community leader is saying, no, it's not Murle, it's a mobilized youth from Eastern Equatoria. And if it happened that these cattle are raided by Murle and they were seen in Pibor, likely revenge will happen in Pibor, neither in Mangui.
And that is what, let me interject in here. This claim that while you're on the ground, what did you find out? Is it who is telling the truth? Is it the board community cattle keepers that saying that the host community are behind of the raid, recent raid, or the governor is saying that this was Murle who came by and raid the cattle? Which one true when you are on the ground? What is evident? What did you see? Who are behind this attack? Is it Murle or the host community?
To be honest with you, one of my mission of being on the ground is to really find an answer to this particular question. And one answer you can easily find to this particular question, my brother, was if we could have an identity of any of the disease of the raiders who was killed. That's one thing that could do. So I try to talk to the cattle herders of Bor, if whether they have bodies of anybody among the raiders that they have killed, so that body can help us at least assess the identity of the raiders. We couldn't come across that body. And there were ID cards of dead bodies that were collected. Some of them are published in various media houses. Some of them are SPLA officers, some of them are people from Kajukeji. But these IDs, you can't identify whether they are for the raiders or they are from the host community that are living alongside with the cattle herders. And that's why in this particular point, what I'd like to say is that my call was, let's remain calm. Of course, Governor of Eastern Equatoria and Commission of Mangui County, both of them have security updates that comes from. And that's why for me, I'm calling, my appeal is that we need to see a national government intervention in identifying the identity of the raiders. Who are exactly the raiders? Because as I said in the raiding, there's all the futures that are coming out. Those futures are not usual features in the raiding. That's something that we can, in investigative point of view, you can trace it out. But I think both Jongole government and Eastern Equatorial State government and national government need to quickly rush in and clarify the identity of the raiders. Because, my brother, if you don't clarify the identity of the raiders, that is the point of revenge attack. As long as the identity of the raider remain unknown, easily some other people may become victims of that unknown identity. So the government need to move quickly. And also I'm waiting whether the administration of Pibor can issue a statement.
Hang on, give me a second. Let me address this guy. John Wushan, let me warn you again. You know, we are all South Sudanese. I'm seeing your comment. Threatening people is not acceptable in this media platform. If you can just do your own propaganda and threatening in Clubhouse that you are doing, because we're seeing a lot of you doing your campaign so hard in Clubhouse, supporting the chaos, the war in the country between the Equatoria and this community, in board community. So that language we don't condone here, John Wushan. Regardless, you are in diaspora and supporting the chaos in the country for these two communities is not acceptable. So please, I would like, if you comment again, I will block you in this media platform because I don't condone that. Let's go back to your to Clubhouse where you preaching the hatred, tribalism that you are doing the best in Clubhouse, but don't bring it here. So please stop that. So go ahead, thank you.
And maybe also my appeal goes to brothers and sisters who feel violence is the best option. You will feel violence is the best option if you are not at the pain of the violence. But if you're in the front line of the violence, you see violence is not the option. We have best options to mitigate the difference among ourselves. And always my appeal is that why should people see violence as the best way forward? Yes, we have challenges. For example, I have to be honest. Yes, some of our pastoralist community are so harsh on people who host them, like the Mandi and the Choli, leaving cattle to go to eat their crops, killing maybe people who they might come across. But those are issues that rule of law need to need to be utilized. Those are the cases that we can't make a massive attacks as a way forward. Or we can't also say, let the pastoralists be armed to attack on the Madi and the Acholis because they believe that carrying arms is the best. That's why I like your idea is that violence is not the option. Let us be sensitive in promoting violence. You can call for violence when you're not in the front line of the violence. But if you see the consequence of the violence, for someone like me who went and see children who are completely innocent, you see them dying. And if we remember from 1983, we say we are South Sudanese, let's struggle for our independence. We have got our independence. None of us have not lost a relative or a close friend, or none of us have not participated in the struggle. We all participated. And that's why I will appeal to call for people who believe that violence is an option. I like to tell them, let's look at the best way forward that is not in a violent way. We can mitigate our situation. Because when I was on the ground, my brothers and sisters who are listening to me, if you see the suffering of the host community and the pastoralists is equal. But some of us are supporting them to go to that situation. But the consequences of violence does not favor any or either of the conflicting parties. It is equal affecting us. So for me, the immediate solution, if I can go back to my update, is that the immediate solution, the national government and the state government have to deploy forces to deter, because likely imminent, more deadly revenge attack may happen. And that's why I'm advocating that both national and state government have to deploy forces that can deter that revenge. Two, for us not to have this tendency of flat accusation that know the identity of perpetrators, Eastern Equatorial State government, Jongole State government, and the national government need to sit down and quickly identify who are the perpetrators so that we can find a way of how to readdress that particular challenging moment that we're in. But the chances that if we have a revenge attack that happen in the next 72 hours or from now, the chance of Nimule Road being closed is very high. And that means a lot to the livelihood of the population in Juba. And I'm aware that Eastern Equatorial State Governor Luis Lobonglochore today he came to Mugali to console and to come and speak out. And of course, one thing that I like to make it very clear is that because of the friction between the farmers and the pastoralists, people have reached to the level of issuing strong statements, being politicians, being military generals from both states, from Jongole and Eastern Equatoria. People have made statements. And of course, the statements are all statements that each person is making a statement to favor their own constituents that they come from, because that's their leadership. And also in the diaspora, we have seen the sharp ways of hate and hostile propaganda, as you said. So for me, this is the situation we're in now. There's a huge population displaced from the host community and the pastoralists, and we have lost lives of innocent South Sudanese. And this particular practice is disturbing us, honestly. The best way is we need to see the government taking responsibility to prevent this from happening. Because, to be honest, I would describe that South Sudan, we're witnessing pockets of genocide, but we don't describe them as genocides. But if you later on sit down and assess the content, they are either genocides or crime against humanity, whether from the pastoralists against farmers or farmers against pastoralists, whether in Magui or beyond Magui, places like Tonch North, Tonch South, what's going on between Abyei in terms of the Ngok Dinka and the Twitch, and what's happening between the Mesri and the Abyei. All these incidents, even what happened recently in Duk, where Murle attacked and raided cattle in Duk, particularly. So all these are pockets of crime against humanity that we're not talking about them because they are sort of like characterized or categorized as human rights abuses, but they're terrible. We are losing the sense of being nationalists. We become too tribal, too communal, and the state is not playing a big role in repairing that damage. So for me, still, my appeal goes back. The state need to do that. From my end, if you may ask me as an activist, what are we doing to contribute positively to mitigate this? We are calling on Tuesday for a meeting of the three governors, the governor of Eastern Equatoria, the governor of Jongole, the governor of Central Equatoria, but also want to bring people from the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of National Security, and the Ministry of Peace Building to see amicable solution to this situation, because we can't continue to witness us losing lives of our citizens simply because politically we have differences in opinion. Let us have differences in opinion, but shouldn't result to that. But also, let us face the challenge, practical on the ground. What is the best way to diffuse friction among our communities? Thank you very much. I'm ready to witness if there's questions, and I'm ready to answer. Thank you over there.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. My next question, revenge attack is not a solution, and this is we need to tell both community to stop doing that, and also to what will be the accountability to bring those people who cause insecurity in the area between the host community and the cattle keepers. So these people, because something I don't understand here is that, okay, people are coming at night, attacking, robbing the cattle, and they leave. But for some reason, people don't know who they are. But the cattle keepers, they know who they are. They know where they came from. So for the people who say, okay, cattle keepers say, yeah, we know these people are this problem. And then people deny, oh, they are not. So this is where we need to do, because these people who cause the root cause of this, people who start attack, and then stealing the cattle, killing the innocent children. If you can see the 3 years, 4 years old, that innocent baby, and they are start killing them. It's really painful. It's real painful. What will the government, the state government, and national government, and also to the host community and the cattle keepers community, board community, to come together, and then also bring these people who are stealing the cattle from both sides. I'm talking about both sides. Those people who are doing revenge attack, killing people, they are guilty, and those people who kill first place, because nobody can support the killing of human beings. So what will the state government, international government to do with the both community to come together and bring these people who are doing this into the books? What will be done?
You know, to be honest with you, my brother, one of the biggest challenge that is challenging our government is our government not being proactive and effective in the rule of law and justice, provision of justice, because incidents has happened. And some of the incidents are individual, by the way. For example, when the pastoralists start coming to Magwe, some individual pastoralists have reached to the level of looting, killing. Initially, from the stage of the beginning, if those cattle herders are held accountable, like Quechua could have been disciplined. And this is where I would like to give a case study. If you look at Lex, say Lex is already an intercommunal violence zone. Nobody expect that one day Lex to be like the Lex today. When Ring became a governor, Honorable Ring, when he became a governor in Lakes, look at what Honorable Ring have done. Honorable Ring have not invested money. He have never run workshops or whatever meetings. What Ring did is instill the culture of rule of law within Lakes community. And Ring by himself, I remember, I used to challenge him when he started the administration. Ring by himself goes to the point of the incidents and held those who are perpetrators accountable at the spot, without using any money from any donor, from anybody from the government, no workshops, no meetings, just at the point he held those who are accountable. And you see, how is Lex today? I was listening in Lex. Lex previously, you can't stay in Lex in a restaurant or in a bar until 2 or 12 a.m. Now, at least you can stay in Lex and can move freely. Nobody tamper with you. You feel like you're safe. Like everybody's wondering, is this the Rumbek? Is this the Lex that we know previously? What happened? What Ring have done? Ring have shown a model, and he did nothing. He just instilled a culture of rule of law and justice. He helped people to be accountable. For me, the best way forward now, the first call that we need to make is that both conflicting communities need to stop revenge attack and stop further attacks. But the state government of Eastern Equatoria and the national government and the government of Jongole, and since Pibor is mentioned, and the government of Pibor need to agree on the identity of the perpetrators. Because when I was talking to the cattle herders chiefs of Bor, they were saying, look here, the perpetrators are not from outside. They're within Eastern Equatoria. And of course, I would like to say this, Eastern Equatoria have other communities that raid cattle. They raid themselves. Maybe they might mobilize themselves and come to the ground. And that's why, for me, it's more important that we need to have unanimous agreement on the identity of the raiders. I was on the ground to identify the identity for myself independently, from my own source, without whether following the position of the Eastern Equatorial State governor or the position of the community leader of Bor. But to identify the identity of the pastoralists in the nature of the attacks is not easy, because they came midnight, they raided, they ran away. None of casualties or none of person is arrested from the raiders, so that you can use it as a source of identifying the raiders, or a body that you can identify that we have found a body that belongs to this particular identity. But there's conflicting definition or identification of the perpetrators. Both communities say these are mobilized from within, while the governor of Eastern Equatoria, as a government, was saying these are Murle who came to attack. So as you said, accountability is needed now to bring calm to this situation and to prevent revenge attack. And for us to have accountability, we need an honest political position. And that's why I was saying, one of my calls, that if the government is thinking about, like president, if president is trying to think about establishing an investigative committee, my recommendation would be that form an investigative committee outside the conflicting communities. Because I will give an example. We have two investigative committees that right now have never helped in bringing accountability to the table. The incident of Ler in Unity State, the committee was composed of members of those communities who are in conflict in Ler. And actually, the members of the community couldn't move further because they couldn't reach consensus as a committee before they go for investigation. The issue of Ngok Denka and Twitch, the committee was established. The members of the committees start disputing among themselves. And we have seen the renewal of violence among that. So for the case of Magui, I wish that the investigation should be from a neutral members from South Sudanese communities that have no direct link with the incident, so that we have an honesty. But the reality is, it is not long always in our practice of raiding that raiding happen and takes long to identify the identity. It's very simple normally. Always, whenever raiding happen, it's either 1 day or 2 days immediately know the identity of the raiders. But this is becoming too political. This is becoming too political because it becomes a political issue between a sub-national level and national level, or between two communities of two different states, and becomes too political because it have association with the issue of land ownership in terms of the use of the land. What do you use the land for? So I do agree with you that both governments have to quickly, and somebody like me, I've been seriously calling the national government to quickly move, identify the identity of the perpetrators and hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, too, can you tell us about how far is it from the Bor area where the Murle came from to Nimule? So how far is it? I thought they're still far away, because I never have seen Murle never cross that far to come toward Magui area or Nimule area, because they always raid the cattle the side of Bor side, go toward Nuer area. But I never heard that Murle, they always come across to come to Eastern Equatoria. Can you tell us how far is it from before Murle area to Eastern Equatoria? Why they did that? If the Murle is responsible for this recent attack?
It is a good question. Actually, I investigated that when I was on the ground. Part of my investigation is to assess both leveling of perpetrators. Mugali and Malijo, that area where the raiding happened, it is on your Juba Nimule road, not Juba Torit road.
Okay.
But when I was talking to the host community, there were incidents of Murle adopting children from that community. There were cases that Murle have adopted children, and one of the archbishop of that area for the Anglican Church internal province have able to show me kids which were returned being adopted by Murle in that area. So it sells indicators that Murle's activities was not raiding. There was no in-raiding exercise case registered, but the case of the adopting children and women in that area were registered, and I was shown children that they have returned to the community. So that's, and this is like about 2 or 3 years ago, happened in that area, because it is on your Juba Nimule Road, but at the bordering of Eastern Equatoria towards the side of Angola. And of course, Murle do come across up to even locally with this Aru Junction. You have heard of them doing adoption in Aru Junction. They have done adoption in some parts of Liria in Eastern Equatoria, which is close there. But the question comes is that the capability that they are able to mobilize to come up to this area to raid. And the question is also the early warning, the state apartheid. Where are they when they're moving until they reach to this particular point to raid? And that is where the area where a really genuine investigation is needed. This is one. Two, one other thing I appeal is that also institutions like UNIMIS may have a credible information. They should be engaged in identifying who are the identities. We have protection of civilian side of it. So why don't we use the choppers of UNMIS to map out where are these kettles, and easily we can identify where they are if we're really committed. The question, it is the will for finding solution. Do we have it, or do we have the will for violence to continue? My assessment is that our will for violence to continue is more stronger than our will for seeking a solution. And this is the problem that disturbs really some of us who believe that we need to coexist as South Sudanese in terms of identity. So for me, the question is a responsibility of the state, is a responsibility of the government to be proactively to find a lasting solution to this. Even moving the cattle out of Magui to go back to Bor, why waste time? We can seek assistance from UNMIS to help move these cattle as faster as we can, but also we can provide solutions back to Bor. So for me, the genuine position is that leadership is required here. It's very important.
Okay, Nuri is asking you to clarify that. Is it adoption or abortion? So you need to clarify.
It's adoption. It's adoption. It's not adaptation. It's adoption. It's not adaptation. Yeah, where they take children and women and they walk away with it.
Okay, adoption. Okay. So thank you. Yes, my next, as we know, last few weeks ago, I hear that Honorable Mukunwe said that those Bor cattle keepers have to return their cattle to Bor area. I saw that video. And also he said that clearly to Bor community that those people who don't want to return their cattle back to Bor, the soldiers will start eating their cattle because they will be they don't have food, but they will get food from there. So is it when this incident happened, there are people in social media saying, oh, those people who behind of that recent attack, killing 23 and looting about 1,000 cattle and killing 50 cows are the SPLA soldiers. So they are accusing this because they said Madam Kulu said. Did you see when you're on the ground, did you see any activities that the soldiers, the government soldiers, are behind of this attack? Yet what Mukulu said during that video, those soldiers are there or no? Did the government deploy the soldiers in the area? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yeah, one thing that when I was trying to look for indicators that can identify presence of our army on the ground or involved in these incidents, I couldn't really find clearly official SPLA who were clearly involved. But what I have seen, and I'm quite sure you might have seen, I'm trying to look for a picture, an image. As I'm speaking to you, I'm on my phone. There's an image, a trading image on social media, which I use it to verify facts when I was on the ground for investigation purposes. The image shows ID card of an SPLA soldier among the deceased. So I took that ID card and I tried to verify with the communities if whether this ID card of the SPLA soldier is what made people to qualify that yes, SPLA are involved. I have to be honest, a clear indicator that a formal organized SPLA raiding cattle of the cattle herders of Bor because they're responding to what Honorable McQuay as a community of Bor have made is not their will. It's not easy to qualify that SPLA were involved in that. But the indicators that you can qualify is that armed raiders have come and raided the cattle. That is very clear. And of course, as I said in the beginning, is that now we are competing over the identity of the raiders because Eastern Equatorial State governor, with all his security apparatus, leveled the raiders as Murle, while the cattle herders from Bor identified the perpetrators or the raiders as youth from Eastern Equatoria that were mobilized. So that is a disputed position. But I don't see any indicator of official SPLA involved in in raiding the cattle. But of course, among the deceased, an ID that they use as this an ID of an SPLA soldier. That's one thing I can say. But also, we should not mix, because there's information that is also coming that in Nyumbe district, some cattle raiders have gone to raid cows and goats and even chicken in Uganda, in Nyumbe district, and Ugandan forces were able to kill. And among them, one of the killed that the Ugandans have killed was a person wearing SPLA uniform. One thing that I like to make it very clear here is that the uniform our law enforcement and security agencies is easily accessed by our communities. Some of them are deserted soldiers. Even if you look at the incidents of raiding, whether in Lake State or in Jongole or any communal violence, there's high chances that you find some of the people who are killed among the perpetrators were in uniform. That is possible. And that shouldn't be a justification that we can justify that it is a formal mobilization of the forces where their uniform were identified being wear by one of the deceased among the perpetrators. I don't think that generic conclusion is better, but we need to see indicators. And that's why I'm keenly calling for a quick and robust investigation on the incidents in Magui, because one thing that I can share with you, when Honorable Luis Lobonglo in Nimule, let me be something I would like to clarify here. The incident that happened in Nimule was not an attack. The attack of the cattle raiding was in Mugali and Malijo. That's where the attacks took place. When those attacks happened, the communities of Bor who are residing in Nimule retaliated by random shooting on air of guns, and they are involved in looting shops, and they are involved in killing 2 police officers which were deployed by the state. So Luis Lobonglo Jore went to Nimule and addressed the public, and he made a statement that those people who came and attacked the government forces in Nimule, for him, he considered them as rebels, because he believed that if there's a criminals who are carrying a criminal activity, they could have done it in the bushes, not inside the town like in Nimule. That's also another challenging position. But we are aware that His Excellency Governor Luis Lobonglo Jore and the Commission of Magui and the administrator, the chief administrator of Nimule, was summoned by the president to come to Juba. And tomorrow we are aware that is 16 May, the SPLA Day is a public holiday. We expect on Tuesday for Lobong to be here, and the Commission of Magui County and the Chief Administrator of Nimule to be in Juba. And I think that will help in identifying, in clarifying the identity of the perpetrators. And I will share with you that I'm ready to share with you any information from Tuesday onward, because I'm quite sure updating the audience from Tuesday, Wednesday on the reality, what is it? I think that's very important for us to set a bit of clarity on what we're speaking now. So I'll be keenly following those meetings and tracking down, and also I'll be keenly involved in moving back forth between and because it's necessary for us to have factual information, and we need to demand just an accountability by having the facts on table so that we can clarify, because making political statement I don't think is healthy for our peaceful coexistence as a citizen of this country.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that will be true, and we will looking forward that we will bring you back again Tuesday or Wednesday after that meeting, and we are looking forward to, and also to still, because the network that is still bad, and we will be invited the commissioner and governor of these 2 state. So yeah, my next question regarding this incident, this is a very hard times, because it's real painful to see our community, our people, they don't like to live together as one people. Because yes, I understand, because this time is a time of farming, and I don't know how far is it between the farm area and where the cattle keepers kept their cattle. How is it? How far is it? Are they kept their cattle within the territory where the host community doing their farm work, or do they keep their cattle in the forest far away from the people? And media yourself.
Yeah, the distance between farms areas and cattle herders is something that I've keen focus on that. And I focus on that in the question of provision of accountability and justice when we come to cases of trial. Some cattle camps are really far from the farming area. Some are close to the farming area. But also what I think is a bit disturbance is the control of the movement of the cattle. Even those who are very far from the farm area, sometimes the cattle, as you know the way how we rear our cattle. You just let them go to the bush and you follow them. And at the end of the day, you find them back to the kraal, to the cattle kraal. So the movement of the cattle, that contacts with some farm areas on the way of searching for grazing grass. That's one thing that, which for me, we could have resolved it by having a system of where do you move the cattle during the great. Because one of the examples that I normally question, these pastoralists are not completely pastoralists. Some of these pastoralists are farmers. So if they can farm their own communities and cattle cannot eat their farms, how comes that they want to eat the farms of the host community? So it's a question of attitudes that we need to raise it up. So I look at that particular component. But other factors that I can bring to your attention is that also the movement of the cattle within the farming communities have moved only not farm areas. Those farm areas are close or farm areas are farther on the limit. Also beehives. You know, the areas where the cattle herders are, the indigenous community do harvest honey. So they have beehives in the bushes, on the trees. Some of these beehives are dropped down and they destroy the harvest without the knowledge of the owners. When the owners come to realize that their beehives are being destroyed. Some also water points where they come into interaction because we don't have a clear, clean water points in our communities or boreholes who have been drilled everywhere. So also they compete over water points. This all mounted to these particular tensions. So for me, it's a question of a state responsibility in deterring the coming together of farmers and pastoralists in the use of the land and putting a system that deters the clashing. So if you're asking me what's the actual failure is proactive role of the state or the authorities at whether national and state level in deterring friction between the pastoralists and the farmers. If we have a proactive role of the state in doing these, officials in doing these, statements like the one of McQuay couldn't have become relevant, that as a cattle herders, SPLA will eat your cattle because they don't have a food. That particular statement for me is disturbing from a responsible people. So we need to be proactive because part of the purpose why we have a government is to respond to the needs of the citizens. This tension merging between the farmers and the pastoralists are the needs of the citizen. So the primary player we need to blame here, it's really the government. The government need to play a big role in ensuring that they are proactive in mitigating tension between pastoralists and farmers, whether outside the community of pastoralists or within the community of pastoralists or within the community of farmers. So that for me, it's a logic. But also, of course, some individuals from the farmers community, from the pastoralist community, this tension for them is a political ladder to power. So investing on this is giving them a ladder to power. So they'll be known, they'll be making statements and all this. So for me, that's another thing that also we need to really differentiate between, are we really responding to issues for finding solutions or responding to issues to fuel it more so that we have an attention of the leadership and in return we gain a power. These are all, and I don't blame here one particular community, whether community of farmers or community pastoralists, all communities have those characters of individuals that like to invest in the violence as a ladder to power. So for me, the whole game is that the state need to play a big role to do that. And I think the state of Eastern Equatoria have another responsibility to make sure that they really play a very strong leadership balanced role in providing public with information that will help in diffusing further escalation of violence. Because right now, we need to find accurate information that will diffuse further escalation of violence among our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And another thing too, talk about the politics things. And I see these issues. I see that there is a politics playing in these issues. It's not between just a host community and cattle keepers. That is a political game is going here. My next question is regarding about, do you think the rebels that NAS who control that area, do you think they are behind of this attack and then blame on the host community?
This is where investigation is very important. This is where investigation is very important to identify who exactly mobilized and what type of rivals were being used, what type of, what is the size of the force that came to attack, right, and how strategic are they in launching the attack, so that you can identify the attack. Of course, one pattern that I've said is a bit unique is the shooting of the cattle. It's not a pattern that is commonly realized in cattle raiding, but that pattern requires more investigation. That's what I say. So the question of politics around this tension is very high. And that's why if the government play a primary role to urgently rush quickly, rescue, and one thing that I like to say, we have gunships, we have helicopters actually for our SPLA. I was today asking one of the generals, is these gunships just, or the choppers, the helicopters that are in Bilfam in the airport, are they only there for a political war? Why don't we use it now for tracking down where those 10,000 kettles that were raided? Why don't you take the choppers, take the helicopters out of Juba, go and trace down in the bushes? I'm quite sure they are not in heaven. They're on the ground. If we use helicopters, we can easily identify them where they are, and we can seize them. And that's supposed to be the role of the state. The state being proactive to provide safety and security for individual and community. So we could have used the helicopters before we go to UNIMIS to ask for UNIMIS helicopters. We have our own army helicopters. Why don't you use them and track down where those kettles have gone? And it's easy, can help in identifying and even actually reduce the magnitude of political analysis around this case, because the political analysis around this case is too much. And some of the political analysis is taking really a personal position for political ambitions. So politics is now growing, and politics is getting worse and is getting more sharp in the analysis of this. Whether it is positive or negative, it requires accurate information about who are really behind the attack and who organized the attack. If we're able to identify that easily cut down political analysis that are too much. Some of them may not be genuine, some of them may be biased. But for me, still the responsibility of the state is very important, because politics is now very high. You have seen sharp increase in hate speech and hostile propaganda from all communities, from both communities that are in conflict, communities of Eastern Equatoria and the communities of Congole. If you see the level of hate speech now and hostile propaganda is too sharp, that even you start asking, is this the spirit that we have for liberating South Sudan? Because we get so disappointed, like, what is it? We have struggled to have a country, but now the country is falling apart. That as if we're not citizens that have struggled in one trench and been bitten by mosquito in the bushes, moving under the rain and singing songs to bring the independent state of South Sudan now. Why is it now that we are falling apart from that spirit? Why is it now we're losing that spirit? What went wrong? I think for me, it's the proactiveness of the state. The state need to assert its role, and that will help us to discipline if we have criminal-minded individuals within our communities, being within the community of herders or within the communities of farmers.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Yeah, you're right, because we need these two communities to start doing propaganda in social media. Because I see a lot, especially Clubhouse. One of the person I got blocked him, so he's doing the same thing. So which is very sad to see. And he's one of the veterans. He was in SPLA. He's a veteran. He was in the, even the time that he said that he was one of the soldiers who brought those Boer IBV in 1991 when that war in Donglei. So they brought those people in Nimule. So he's one of the soldiers brought these people. And now you see the language that he's writing. It's still sad. And we need to encourage to call all those Sudanese, especially those people in the aspect, to stop doing those. So you have to be neutral, supporting the peace among these two communities. This you should not support the war. So my next question is regarding about so the way forward, that what will be done. Seeing the time that the cattle herders moved to Eastern Equatoria area, did the cattle hustlers, I know they usually have the leadership. Did they sit down with the host community to have a meeting, how they can have set the boundaries, if they these cattle keepers can have a way to have a timeline. They said that they would not go with their cattle. Did these two communities, did they have a meeting before when these cattle keepers moved to Eastern Equatoria area?
There were several attempts from the host community reaching out to the cattle herders chiefs, and also they had meetings about how do we avoid cattle going to farm areas? How do we discipline some individual among the cattle herders not to be abusive in host communities? Those meetings were held. And besides that also, there were formal meetings that involved UNIMIS engaging the communities to have a consensus. The last meeting was the visit of the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs with the huge delegation to the ground to really bring a consensus around the movement of the cattle out of Magui in a safe and peaceful way. Those meetings were held. Challenge that I have, my brother, I would like to share with everybody in this platform. The challenge that I have is this. There are individuals who are investing on confusion among our communities. An individual incident can be turned to be a communal incident. And this is what have confused our community so much. So we have these individuals. They can be within the others community, they can be within the pastor, within the farmers community. Within the others communities, if people are demanded for accountability, some people go further and complicate it. Within the farmers communities, if there's any reaction that's negative to the others, they don't react, the farmers goes further. So one of the biggest things that I like to say is that it's a big challenging is that we are not allowing our citizens to look into the better way of how they want to peacefully coexist. Normally, we need to prescribe for them solutions. And the prescription of solutions without actual understanding of the context is messing this country. I have to be honest. It's the same thing that messed up with Tombola, because prescription of solutions from outside. It's the same thing that messed up with Tonch, prescription of solutions from outside. It's the same thing messed up Denkangok and Twitch because prescription of solutions outside. It's the same thing that even affected Lakes for quite long because there's prescription of solutions from outside. And that's why when Ring became a governor, I work with Ring that you need to avoid listening to prescription from outside. Let the people who are really facing the bitter pill, let them decide. So for me, it's a question of politicians that we need to urge them. It's good to see our communities enjoying their freedoms and their rights. And it's bad for us to see anybody tampering with the freedom and the rights of our host communities. But if it happened that there's a dispute, there's a friction around enjoyment of the rights and the freedoms that we have as a citizen or as a host community, the best way is let's speak and let's pick up a non-violent approach. As a leaders, we are leaders to everybody. We're supposed to get them together and put them together and discipline them equally. And leave the call that was made by the host community in Magui, that cattle herders should go back to the community. We should not make political interpretation into that. Let's look at the big picture. What does it mean? But taking political agenda around these frictions is what is confusing us. And my worry is that the chances of criminals taking advantage of this particular practice in the country right now is very high. We're going to have too many bandages that even the state will fail to control. And that's why, for me, the biggest now, this lesson of Magui should be a lesson that we should learn out of it and we should minimize it not to continue. How do we do that? Is the state have to be strong enough and impose the rule of law, impose justice, and allow our communities to talk. And politicians need to distance. And I can also, for me, accountability is not only for the perpetrators that are involved in the crisis, being it farmers or being it herders. Accountability have to go to as far as people are making statements, who are prescribing solutions, that these solutions resulted to tensions. Because let us try to look at Rwandan genocide. Until some people are still held accountable for Rwandan genocide because of making statements from far distance in a media, and these statements are translated to something that happened on the ground very bad. So for me, it's a question of us taking responsibility, acting as nationals. This concept of us belonging to our communities, to our ethnic identity, and want to use it as a complete, absolute definition of who we are is really causing havoc in this country. And this simply comes because the politics of today that are entertained by the state are not balanced politics. People go to power by using community and ethnic identity. And this has confused the identity of us seeing ourselves as South Sudanese. Because of telling people, yes, we may not have a common identity, but faith as a Christians is a common identity. And Christianity is very clear in teaching us about that. But we're losing that particular identity. So for me, my position that we need to do is that time has come now for us to have a dialogue, an honest one. But we should not prescribe solutions to those who are facing the bitter pill of the violence that we're witnessing. As you said, we're really losing. I don't think any South Sudanese, when you see the images of the children, for me who have witnessed on the ground, is very painful. Even my brother, how much, my joke, you are enemy to me. it's not easy for me to target children around you who are innocent.
Yeah.
You know, it's really painful. It's a bitter, I'm setting tears. These might have been our best leaders of the South Sudan that we won. We have killed them in that way. Why don't we have a non-violent approach? Why don't we embrace dialogue to continue? And why are we not listening to dialogue when people are ready to dialogue? So for me, these are really challenges that it's really disturbing me being in the country and witnessing this in the country. And looking at the way how Banden were fighting the Arabs, were insulting the Arabs. And this reminding me of statements that were being made by late Turabi, late Sadiq al-Mahdi, that South Sudanese will never rule themselves. They will never govern themselves, give them the independence. They will mess up. And we proved those statements correct. And that's why even some people are singing songs. I will tell you, I was in some part of the country, some people are singing songs of going back to Sudan because they believe that maybe Arab is a uniting factor among us, though they are our enemies. But is that really a genuine struggle for why we're in the bush since 1947, calling for independence? So I think time has come for us to take responsibility as South Sudanese. Yes, how much dispute we have, violence is not the option. Let's talk, let's interact, and let's respect. When dialogue is called, let's respect the dialogue. When there's outcome of dialogue, let's respect the outcome of dialogue. And whatever the problem is, solutions we must seek for it, not through the barrel of the gun. Barrel of the gun have taken lives. You don't feel it now. You come to fail when you start losing the loved ones and the relatives one and your friends that have been together. Country cannot be ruled by ethnicity, or country cannot be ruled by dominance over others. Country is ruled when we are able to reach consensus. That's why in some countries, different ethnic identities, but nationality is more important than anything else. Why are we South Sudanese telling the world that we're unable to exist as a nation because of our differences? That's the call I have to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother Edmund. That's really a wonderful thing. And this is what we want. We let us keeping up, calling both party and preaching this. Let these two communities bring a peace. So we don't need to see the innocent children dying both sides. That the thing is horrible. It's really sad to see. And we need to advise those people who are please side this. Please, this is the life of people. So you need to we need to stay away from those. Yes, we see both we see the argument, and they did these two committees have to sit down, talk, and then dialogue is very important. So thank you so much. We will bring you back on Tuesday after the meeting, after president meeting with the governor and commissioner. So we'll bring you back, and I will reach out to the governor too and the commissioner so we can bring them, because social media nowadays is a tool that they can come and talk to the people. Because I see, because I involved in social media, and I see what I'm seeing in social media is really harmful to our community back home. Because these people in the Western world are using social media as a tool to fuel the violence. This issue is going on right now. If you go to Clubhouse, you see how people are doing. You will be sad to see. And these people are called the as an interaction. They should talk about the way that unify people to bring people together instead of divided. Talk the language of tribalism, all kinds of stuff. So we need to get away from those. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe if you can allow me to communicate on this particular issue of social media.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I hope people are listening to me in this platform, as I want to communicate to them, is that we are involved as an institution in tracking social media, and mainly we're looking at pattern of hate speech and hostile propaganda. I know freedom of expression is something that all of us need to enjoy. Free press is that everything that we need to enjoy, but we must take responsibility, because as you demand for your rights, you should not forget that you have responsibility and obligation to safeguard your rights. So some of the people are using this hostile and hate speech, which of course hate speech have its clear indicators. We are tracking them. We'll be having a report coming out on really looking at communal violence and hate speech. This is really a big challenging things that we have been seeing. And to be honest with you, we have been tracking in several incidents that the Tonch North, Tonch East, and also we are looking at this aspect of Magui. We're looking at the aspect of Duke recent incidents. We'll be looking at the aspect of Denka Ngok and Twitch. We'll be looking at element of hate speech, because hate speech is really dividing our communities. It's dividing our communities. And I will tell you, it is good for you to speak at the hate speech like this, but you know, it becomes painful when a foreigner starts questioning you about your attitudes, about nationalism. When you start hearing a foreigner saying, oh, I'm sorry, we thought that by then we stood up, we jubilated to have the state of South Sudan, but it is shameful to see the way how you hate each other, the way how you insulted each other, the way how you express your anger as if you don't want a state of South Sudan to exist. You know, it's becoming shameful. You can do it among yourselves, but when somebody from outside starts challenging you on that, it's becoming much more disturbing. And really we find that we're losing our identity. So for me, it's a question of tolerance. But also for me, it's a question of socialization. How much are we really socialized? When we say we're civilized, we're socialized. Part of identity of socialization and civilization is a culture of tolerance. And culture of tolerance, you can learn about level of culture of tolerance among ourselves in the use of the language. The language you're using does not show that we tolerate each other. It's like we're completely different. I wish anybody who is expressing a hate for promoting violence should sit down and remember the lives of those who were lost since 1947 until 2004, before the signing of the CPA, whether those lives we lost them to promote one ethnic group, or we lost them to have the independent state of South Sudan, or we lost them to kill these children who are completely innocent, whether being from herders, or whether being from pastoralists, or whether being from farmers anyway. I'm trying to refer to farmers. Whether we kill a child of a Choli and a Made, or we kill a child of a Dinka, do our 21 years of struggle give us that energy, give us that power, give us that shameless position before the international community? Because we have no market for buying South Sudan. Where the South Sudan we're in now, it has to protect it, it has to correct it. I know it's not a unique case for South Sudan. History have shown us that some countries have undergone this, but why should we start from square one? Why don't we learn from the experience of others? Closest to us is genocide. So as I said, pockets of genocides happen in the country, but still we can't call them genocide. But time will come, we'll name them as a genocide. And it will be shameful when it comes to realize that our own statements we made in various social media as a hate, as a hostile propaganda, have contributed to those genocide. For us to say sorry, it's more painful. That shows we have never been socialized or civilized. The truth is that challenges are facing us, but we must mitigate them with responsibility and with care. We hope that the future of South Sudan we want is a South Sudan that is described by happiness across different ethnic and tribal lines, that we can sit with our different names and we hold one flag and we all stand firm, protected as different tribes and different identity. Wish the best for the future of South Sudan. Thank you, my brother, for hosting me.
Thank you, thank you. Before I let you go, I have one gentleman here in club. I want to ask you a question. I will give you this chance to ask your question or comment, remark before I end the talk. Go ahead.
You know, he spoke about the. I want to thank him for coming by here. In regards to Nimule, you know, to be honest with you, my brother, to be honest.
Can you hear him, Kurt? Yeah,
let him go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my question to you, I know that you are from Equatorial. And to be honest with you, nowadays, the hate speech that you're talking about actually is coming from my brothers and my sister from Equatorial. I don't know you, the people, who are intellectual of Equatorial. Because to be honest with you, I'm speaking to you as a South Sudanese, and at the same time, I'm a community. I'm from a Dinka community. And nowadays, the people who are actually paying the price, and the most hated people, innocent Dinka, are the most people who are paying the price. And we have seen that cows have been killed. Dinka have been killed in the region of Africa, in the region of Equatoria. Dinka have been killed. Yeah, and we all know as an intellectuals, if you become a truthful man, Dinka, they pay a big price since before 1955. simply because they have their own people coming from the Dinka community who actually are politicians, and they hold sometimes a very high positions in the decision making positions. But the Dinka who are in the grassroots, the normal people, they always pay price because those people who coming from the community, they hold a very high position in the country. You have seen it in 1991, my brother, what happened in Boer. Simply because John Garang, people disagree with John Garang, the Dinka become a victim in Madagascar, Bantu. Even all these rapes people are talking about. The first woman to be raped in South Sudan was a Dinka woman. Gang rape, and rape with the sticks. Even the stick was put in her, inside her, and she was dissected. Even some Dinka woman dissected. They have a children. This thing happened in 1991. Happened again in 2013. And now recently, in this 2022, the Dinka children are killed in Equatoria. And most of the people who are speaking hate speech are the Equatorian against the Dinka, to the point where even they consider themselves as individuals, they don't even look people. They can hurt the feelings of the people who have a friends from Equatoria. So you, as an intellectual from Equatoria, what do you say about this? We, the Dinka.
So should I go ahead and answer him?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, first, I'd like to tell you, my brother, in terms of the struggle for South Sudan independency, normal, I like to use the language that every South Sudanese have paid the price, because one of our biggest problem is leveling one particular identity for paying the price. I'm quite sure all of us at our various capacity, and even those who are not being in the front line, who are in the diaspora contributing with statements, with money, I'd like to say first, in the history of the liberation, all of us pay an equal price. That's what I'd like to make it, that all of us has contributed, so that we don't take by putting other people like that not pays the price. But when come to this issue of the hate speech, what I'd like to tell you is that our report, we're not going to discriminate, and we're not going to have any one person. We're going to tackle all South Sudanese in terms of hate speech. And sometimes I'll tell you, people who tend to stand on a middle ground of really defending their what you call national identity, you are leveled. I do get a lot of messages that sometimes are sent to me that you know, there's this Arabic word, ita muaras adenka. It means you're like a maras. So it depends on the statement I say. When I say the statements against the Equatorians who come to rise, some will say, ita muaras the Equatorians. So it seems like I've always been leveled from one end to another because of my position as an activist. And normally for me, I decided to remain objective to the facts, because I know that my statement will help me accountable, or it will in future be used to qualify a situation. Yes, I've seen the sharp increase of hate speech among the sons and daughters of Equatoria against the Dinkas. And someone like us, we have been battling and really readdressing that. The unfortunate thing I'd like to say is that in social media, some may claim like they are in diaspora while they're within country, some are in diaspora. The big challenge that I'd like to communicate to you, my brother, is that hate speech and hostile propaganda against ethnic identity will never help our country prosper. Will never our country have a good image, whether it is from Equatoria against Dinka or from Dinka against Equatoria. That will not help us. Whether you have seen in 2013 how it happened, and we're able to spot. So I would like to tell you that one of the things that I'm so disappointed is that the people who are really, really, really propagating this hate speech are the intellectuals, are those of us who have gone to school how to read and write, are those of us who knows that hate speech is harmful, that are doing that. So my answer to you is that in terms of the report, I'm talking about, we're coming with the report of hate speech following this incident. I would like to tell you, we'll never favor anyone. We will never favor anyone. We'll need to be objective, genuine over that. But what I'd like to say is that we have reached a worst moment where we start mobilizing ourselves on ethnic line against others, which is completely disappointing moment. But honestly, like what I said, my brother, if you look at the whole struggle, it becomes a bit problematic. People are willing, paying price that are very expensive, that we don't expect that to happen among ourselves. And one of the things that is disappointing is that why after independence, we start killing ourselves as if we have not struggled for the independence of South Sudan. We have struggled for it. And the struggle does not give any particular person a cut to to undermine any other person. As I said in the beginning, whether you're directly involved or indirectly involved, we are all South Sudanese. The referendum, we all vote together. The question is, why are we not up to our mind, up to our intellectual capacity, up to our socialization, up to our civilization, to see that if there's any challenge before us, gun is not the option. Killing shouldn't be the option. I can disagree with you as my brother, as a Dinka, but that does not mean that I should harm you, I should take away your life. That completely is a very bad culture. That is now we're building among ourselves, that we have gone to school, we disagree with you, that we reach to the level that I and you, we can't speak to each other. The only language you need to speak is claiming lives. For how long should we claim lives of each other? And for how long do we show ourselves that we are nationalists? One of the identity of being nationalist is to dialogue with your brother. How much you disagree, you keep on insisting using dialogue as a non-violent approach to find a solution, so that we can find a way of building the state of South Sudan we want. But the problem is that we have is that some people believe that using of the gun is the best option. Look at, like, I would like to give an example. Tombora is very far from anywhere. The Barandas and the Zandes are killing themselves until recently come to realize that nobody paid the price of losing their lives. It's they themselves losing it. And their area is losing development because of this particular situation, until they have to find a way of how to resolve it. So for me, my appeal that I would like to make to audience who are listening to us here, and specifically South Sudanese in the clubhouse, how much we disagree, violence is not the option for resolving our disagreement. How much you disagree, let's embrace dialogue. And also, how much you have a power, accept dialogue as the best way. And let us try to see a amicable way of resolving things. Because one of the biggest things that is now coming out very clear, and I'm a bit worried about it. This may be my option of speaking in this platform, because you can't predict the future. One may lose his life at any moment in this work that we're doing, moving in between our communities. But one thing that I'm becoming so disappointed, it's when I see intellectual South Sudanese using tribe as a point of strength. I'm so disappointed. If it happened that I have to leave the earth and I have to go to God, if I'm asked one thing that I'm disappointed with, it is when I see South Sudanese using tribe as a card of deciding and influencing. It's completely shameful. It's completely meaningless. It's completely an act of uncivilized and socialized people. We must take responsibility. We must sit on the table and we must sort out our problem. And we must accept the truth. We should not dodge the truth. The truth will set us free if we stand for the truth as South Sudanese at our various capacity. Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Madid. I have only two more questions that I will start. First of all, I like the way you try as a history. But, yeah, Ustaz,
Naam.
if you identify, the most of the people identify themselves as Equatorian, but you identify me as and I feel like I am a thinker. Region that I know that region is not a tribe. So
Exactly.
As me as a tribe. Do you think that's fair when you identify me as a thinker and you identify yourself as
Equatorial?
And you know that Equatoria is not a tribe. Even where they need to become a victim of that small Equatoria. Now,
yes, exactly.
Can come in the middle. There is no a tribe in the world that can come in the middle. Become a peaceful. All of them, they are all against the Dinka.
Yeah.
And then I feel here, I become I link
Yeah.
The Dinka. Most of them were coming. Most of the Equatorian, they come like Equatorian, but they identify where as a Dinka, and they are all as a Dinka. So just tell me, I don't know, when you say that, when you use the tribe as a strength, it is unbelievable. When you, as a tribe, is against one tribe, is it fair? That's number one. Number two, questions that's why I want to ask you. When you earlier you talked about contribution, where I didn't talk about contribution in the movement, but I'm saying about the speaking of the Dinka. the suffering of the people. And we acknowledge this, to be honest. We must acknowledge this as a South Sudanese. Because the movement still is a one until Ghana SPLA. Who were in, whether in South Sudan, the states that are under the government of Sudan, the Dinka who were they were officials or they were students, were they normal, they were targeted. Because they were South Sudanese people, they were actually recruited and employed. It was against the normal Dinka who were actually within the who did not even agree with the SPLA. They don't want to join the movement. This thing happened. We have militia of Romania in Equatoria. In Eastern Equatoria, there were some militias from Khartoum armed. If you come to Equatoria, those of Kalaman Wani,
Boro, yeah.
So Ismail and Konya. You come to Unity Street, those of Odinamati. You come here in Malacca, problem. Dinka inside and outside, they were suffering. And after that, the South Sudan became independent simply because the leader comes from the Dinka. Dinka is still suffering. And now, people talking about contribution. I never asked about it. I was not saying about contribution in the movement. What acknowledge the suffering of the people of Dinka. When it comes to contribution, Dinka, they did not have a choice because Dinka were pushed to go to push. When it comes to the movement, Dinka, the majority in the movement, they did not have a choice because they did not even within the Sudan, they did not have, there's no country to Dinkas because they were a no tribes. So, Yadimana, let us be honest, Yadimana destroy all Dinka. I don't know where from Sudan want to take Dinka. Dinka is suffering from the lava. Dinka is suffering from the movement. And no one of Yadimana, this country called South Sudan, the cows, the soldiers, Dinka, they have given up their schools. You know this very well. Dinka was an official, was harassed by the Amnita or Amnita.
Amnal Watan Nam.
So he controlled the movement. Parliament can't move it. She's actually student. Was harassed. Beside Malanda, who then out that is because he's going to die. The movement SPLA. Even if not, a lot of people, they do not even know what is SPLA fighting for. It's a Dinka
exactly.
It's the same movement for them. So, with that being said, you know, at the manner, why don't you acknowledge the Dinka pay a price, contribution to the Dinka, when we are not even denying the contribution of other people. Comes, when the contribution comes, if your Lema God, you are aware, the Lema God was talking about it.
Yes.
The Lema God was the inside, the move of people, including those people like I but he has had the difficulty of king, sons and the daughters. Because they say sons of daughters of the Lord, they did not want to join the movement simply because they were the people who asked for South Sudan to be regions from Nimule a long time ago. But to come with that, are the majority there. My question as an Equatorian, Yadimana, did you guys sit down as an Equatorian that you guys have a problem of hatred against Dinka? And then did you identify why people think? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my brother, first, I like the spirit of dialogue that you are expressing, because normally for me, as intellectuals, that's the way how we need to build consensus. And that's the way how we need to zero facts on the table. First, in terms of population, yes, Dinka is a big tribe, it's a populated tribe, it have done that. But what I'd like to tell you is that the new trend that now you have seen, that you qualify. And also I do agree with you that Dinka is not a tribe, it's an ethnic identity, because there are sections of tribes within this particular praise Dinka. And I'm somebody who, in several workshops, I used to correct people who believe that Dinka is one tribe. No, it is an ethnic group. And within ethnic group, you have different tribes. I do agree with you that like this notion of Equatoria, being seen, Equatoria is not a tribe, it's a combination of tribes, and it's a regional identity used to identify a particular region. So I do agree with you on that. But the reality is, the bitter pain you have is the same bitter pain we share with you. But the challenge that normally I have is that as such sober-minded debates we don't have among ourselves. We have debates with conclusion. I like the way you ask, like, have you guys really sat down and have hatred against the Denka? Yes, I'm from Equatoria, but for me, I don't believe on anything that attacks me. With that, I know I have a tribe, I know I have a region, but that does not qualifies me to hate any person whom I didn't know enough. Because one of the things that I like to share with you, my brother, this particular hate speech you are seeing, and this much more hatred you are seeing in various grouping of South Sudanese, is simply because we know ourselves with the narrative of negative stereotypes. We didn't take time to understand positive stereotypes. And I think the background where you're coming from is that we need to understand the positive stereotype, because all of us, what we know is about negative stereotypes. I can give an example. Previously, what I know when I was growing up, the narrative I have is that if you tell me about this place for Juju, if you tell me about Denka, I was told like this is a stubborn person. If I heard about Nuer, that this is a person, if you fail to get the leadership, he will rebel. If I told about Mondar, that these are the people who doesn't want to go to school. So this negative narratives still is shaping opinion of others. Until today, I'm speaking with you. The reality is that people have contributed, and being as a majority population, their contributions will be counted. So for me, my answer to you is that this dialogue we have with you, I wish could have been a dialogue in a room where we sit face to face and we argue and we zero consensus. Because until we tell the truth, we'll never be free, by the way. And until we accept the truth, we'll never be free. Until we're able to set the narrative that is a correct narrative, and we accept it, we work with it. It is everywhere in every society. These patterns are there. But why should these patterns in our society become a source of violence? That's for me my main problem. Is that if this pattern could have not lead us into violence of claiming lives of innocent people, I could have no problem. But now it have led to a direction that I don't love it. Nobody have the right to take away life of anybody based on any disagreement. Specifically when we become a nation, yes, we may use violence, but then when we're claiming for our identity as South Sudanese, as Africans, as Christians, being marginalized by the Arabs who are Muslims, who want to impose us to become Arabs, and we feel we're not Arabs. That is a cost that I can stand firm and even lose my blood for it. But after having our state, should we really disagree because of our ethnic identity? Should we really disagree of petty issues that if we have a strong position, we can hold the state accountable to mitigate? Because if you look at these factors, then we're losing our lives. And my brother, one thing pains me in my statistics. In a week, we will lose more than 50 lives of innocent South Sudanese across the country. Now multiply that by 4, 200,000. Multiply it by the year. Why? Revenge attacks, ghetto raiding, competition over the use of the land. Are these really genuine factors? And some of us who are intellectuals, we take it up there. We amplify it up there. And some of us even turn some of those amplifications to become real. And some people is imposing it. That's a track record of what is called land grabbing or whatever you said. It is simply from coming from that background. And that's why I like your spirit of being an honest and open one. And for me, I like dialogue. Dialogue makes us to build consensus. So I do agree with you. Something went wrong and need to be corrected. And for us to correct that is to set the truth correctly, and we must accept the truth so that pave a way of living together as South Sudanese, regardless of our ethnic identity or tribal identity or regional identity. South Sudan must all equally without any form of discrimination. I do agree with you. The pain you have now is the same pain I'm sharing. And it's the same pain that I tell sometimes when you speak about this particular site A, B will call you Tamuaras against A. The moment you turn and speak about B, A will call Tamuaras to B, or Sanda will say you are Mars of C, because we don't want to accept the truth. And until when should we dodge the truth? So that we bail the peaceful and the humble. And one thing that I'm feeling disappointed, my brothers and sisters who are in this platform, if you sing our national anthem, and if you look at the words of now our national anthem, our actions are contrary to it completely. We're claiming lives of people. We are really losing lives of our own citizens. And we sing that national anthem that is rich, that everybody loves to turn the national anthem to look like South Sudan national anthem. So for me, the main problem is our state needs to take responsibility. And those of us who are intellectuals, let us be context-based. Let us accept the truth. Let us leave misinterpretation that sharpen disagreement that leads to violence. For me, it's a question of absence of genuine, sober-minded individuals arguing for the truth and making the truth to prevail, because without the truth prevailing, we will never peacefully coexist. And normally truth is a tool, is a fuel of violence. So we must accept the truth to stop violence. If we deny the truth, then we're fueling violence. If we accept the truth, peace and stability will prevail in our state. And as our national anthems end up, I will end up by saying, let God bless South Sudan. At our various capacity, we can disagree, but let us pray for the best to make sure that we have the peaceful country that we wish to be in when we are struggling for our independence since 1943. And when we told the Arabs, we are not your identity and we need to be independent and we're able to govern ourselves. So I do share with this, my brother. I hope that we can continue this dialogue and continue that through this dialogue, we can build consensus on the nation, that we want to coexist, and the nation we need to build as the South Sudan that we want. It's a South Sudan of harmony, peace, and stability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Brother Edmund. We will start from here. We come to our time is ending. Thank you so much. I will bring you back on Tuesday after the governor and commissioner meet with the president. So, yeah, so we, yes, go ahead, 1 minute. We are about to wrap up. So the time is.
Like you in South Sudan, so we can fight. I like the way when you put it aside. Thank you very much, Edmund, Mr. Edmund. God bless you and God bless your family. Keep doing the good work. You are a very good, open-minded person, even though I corner you as a Equatorian, but you answer the questions with an open-minded, with a pure heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, I want to thank you for the great work that you do for our country, and God bless you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. And I would like, before I end the show, you know, I would play the national anthem for the country after we close the show. So go ahead, put your last statement, and then I close down the
show. My last statement is that only I call for calm. I call for calm among South Sudanese. And let the calm be a sympathy for the lives of those innocent children who are born, who never know what's happening in their lives before they see the future that they have seen in front of them. We have challenges, but let violence not be the option. How much we disagree, let's dialogue, let's not claim the lives of innocent citizens. None of us here have a responsibility to take away life of others, but we need to do. Whether being pastoralists taking away lives of farmers in Magui or being farmers taking away lives of pastoralists in Magui, that's unaccepted. Let us stand up and let us try to embrace dialogue as a way forward to find amicable solution to the challenges facing us. Some of these challenges, the driving factors are beyond our control, like climate, like reality of certain individuals, but those should not be a factors that make us to claim lives of our innocent children. I'm really bitter to see children suffering because of our actions that are irresponsible actions. Let God bless South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one gentleman just came up. Let me give you 2 minutes, Abraham.
Shukran jaziran, brother Majid. And let me first take this opportunity to welcome and thank our brother, Mr. Yakani, for being here with us today. We are really grateful for information provided. We need facts from people from the ground who actually knows what's happening, and those who actually can provide a concrete fact about what's happening in Eastern Equatoria. Eastern Equatoria cattle camp issues has been a big deal for the last 6 weeks. And and I'm not satisfied the way we are discussing issues in diaspora. A few things came up, and I sent 2 questions in there. Number one is escalation of handling facts to a level of mobilizing and just talking things that are destructive for the nation of South Sudan. What I know as people in diaspora, there is no way we can have a full, concrete, valid information about things that are happening in South Sudan. That's number one. Number two, our take as a South Sudanese concerned citizen in diaspora, it should be we should be neutral and part of solution instead of exaggerating and inciting. Okay. Number one, what happened after the first incident? We mentioned names, and I don't know if it's appropriate to do that, to mention somebody's name here. But it's just to point out the facts so we can direct the real concern into the right people and be accountable to their acts. When the first incident happened in Bor, Governor came actually, Mr. Lobon came to Eastern Equatoria, and we talked, the cattle came as you stated earlier, and we also talked to the local resident to find a way to coexist. People here in the diaspora came out in the clubhouse and they say, well, we should not have these people there and we should kick them out by force. And a few days later, actually that happened. A few young men from Eastern Equatoria were at the river side, clashed with the cattle camps. So some of them lost their lives. So it was a retaliation of cattle camps. Now, what was our take in there? People from that region by names, they came out and they said, okay, if it's that the case, we're going to mobilize our people, we're going to be sending resources, and we're going to revenge. And that happened. It ended up with killing of 19 people and 6 wounded, based on the facts that were stated on the social club house. And then the issue continues until a few days ago. A few days ago, some people came out with a plan, something, okay, following that gentleman also came out, they actually become 2 now. They have direct contact with people in Eastern Equatoria, and they said they actually help. They mobilize resources, and they form an army for that area. They call it National Guard for Eastern Equatoria. That's exactly how they say it, and he was promoting it in social media, clubhouse, and he was encouraging other tribe of Equatorians to do the same. And he called for a meeting, a closed-room meeting, so he can help them how they can establish their own forces to defend themselves. There is nothing wrong with that. The idea of protecting each other is a given right, no problem. But if it's intended to target a citizen that has its own sovereignty, they have their own government, whether a local government or a national government, is wrong. An aspect of humanity also is wrong to have pleasure in hurting other people. So I did not like the idea. The same group came out and they called for a meeting a few days ago for full meeting to launch and mobilize resources to establish Eastern Equatoria or Equatorial Defense Force. You see, they had meeting 3 days ago. Also, they specifically clear on their agenda is to kick Denka out and from Equatoria, like Kokorok, basically, and their excuse was that we want to have our own independence with none other 2 people from the 2 regions, the Barakazal and Upper Nile. Now, the question is this, Mr. Yakani. By the way, I used to listen to you on IR Radio from 2012 to 2015. Now, we try to verify these people's intention. Is it the fact these people actually that in contact with people in Eastern Equatoria? Are they? And the formation of 25,000 armed strong of Eastern Equatorian youth, is it the fact that exists and is there? Thirdly, is it the governor of Eastern Eastern Equatoria aware of these activities? If it's so, what is the government take of these kind of behaviors, where we can go to the extent that us we mobilize ourselves in a tribal line to hurt people who live back there in Africa, and we are in diaspora. What is the government take on these kind of behaviors? And now it become across the board. It's like it's the behaviors here nowadays. We are living in a line-based, in a tribalism line-based. I'm Denka, I'm Shuluk, I'm Nuer, and that's what it is. So, are the government aware of these kind of behaviors, and what is the take of Eastern Equatoria if it's aware of this kind of behavior? Of this, the formation of 25,000 army, they call it the National Guard of Eastern Equatoria. Does it exist? If you want to know that, that's number one. Number two, are they aware that a communication between people in Eastern Equatoria and these people who inciting war here and there of this behavior? Are they aware of this? Is it a fact? And what is the local state role on this? Now, in the cattle camp, issues with the local farmers is a national issue, and we feel sorry about what happened between these two people. But the issue should be left to a local government to handle it, and us to endorse a better relationship among the communities, the people in the diaspora. And thank you, Mr. Yakini, and thank you, Brother Abraham. That's my three questions.
Thank you, Abraham. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Yakini.
Thank you, Abraham. Thank you for your questions and thanks for that. One thing I'd like to say is that one role social media is playing is too negative, is really diverting attention to something that sometimes may not mount to here on the ground. I'm on the ground. I'm speaking with you, I'm on the ground. I was just today from that particular triangle of Mugali and the Nimule side of it, is that leveling that the youth who are on the ground is really mobilized with those names that were getting there. To be honest with you and sincere with you as a nationalist, I've never seen something happen like that, because I've seen the consequence of the violence going on, affecting both sides, being is the Dinka pastoralists or the Madi and the Acholi communities being displaced equally, and they're paying the same pain of price of displacements. There's none of them who is gaining who are on the ground. But of course, in the social media, we can see those messages going on. And one thing also our appeal is that's why in the beginning, I don't know if you heard it, that we have been putting a social media tracking program, because we need to really track out some of these fake hate and hostile propaganda that are going on, because this may lead to a harmful action against a particular group that actually sometimes the social media debate does not represent them. And that's why I'm asking that when in social media, let us be responsible enough, not putting a particular community into consequences that sometimes does not represent that particular community. That's one thing that I like to share with you, but I'm on the ground. I've never seen something like that. But of course, government is a government. Government have its own. I'm not part of the government. I'm not with the government. I'm quite sure if those things are happening, government have its intelligence. Maybe what hold the water here, and what I like to bring to the attention is what we need to see during the meeting of the president with Governor Luis Lobong and the Commissioner of Magui and the Administrator of Nimule, is when Governor was making his statement on the situation in Nimule. Governor have said those people who came and shoot gun in Nimule, he constituted them as rebels, because if they are criminals, they could have done their work outside. Who does he refer to? Is this word refer to the raiders who came? Does this refer to people who are retaliating? What does this mean? I think more investigation is needed here. And that's why one of my genuine and honest answer I can tell you that right now with the situation in Magui, and with what all is going on in social media, even our colleague who asked a question before you about the question of really, did we sit as a region of Equatoria? How do we feel about Dinka? All those questions, all those concerns. I think for me, the best answer I can provide you is we need to push the government to do a quick independent verification, identify who are behind the incident, what triggered that incident, how do they come to that incident, to free our communities, being the communities of the cattle herders or being the communities of Magui, because also communities of Magui will not pay a price of what does not represent them. One thing I like to bring attention is this. Yes, among the cattle herders, when they come to Nimule, there are cattle herders who are stubborn, who take the law into their hand, and they're individuals. We need to treat them when they commit atrocities against the farmers. They should be held accountable as individuals. They couldn't be generalized for that. That's one thing that I like us also. That's something that is missing. And recently, I've been studying how in ancient history our people live together with cattle. One person was telling me that, in history, and these are chiefs who are aged, that some of them, I predict the age are beyond 80 years old. They were saying in the ancient history of South Sudan, when they're keeping cattle can move. But normally, there's a clear culture, they don't move to farms. If they move to farms, there's a severe punishment. There's a severe punishment. But then there's a system. I asked that, but now, why does this system collapse? Most of them are telling me, like what you said, is that actually our local government is no longer playing its role as required. Local government by then is strong, is so committed that it diffuses communal issues and they manage it at their level. And that's one of the things is that my main concern is that our government is not proactively in putting action on these particular issues. Honestly, let us speak the truth. I was in Bor less than a week. I was in Bor during the floods, and I'm ready to share my images when I was in Bor. In the town by then, I used with the canoe because it's flooded. The floods are real. But if we were to move population from Bor to Eastern Equatoria, if we could have a proactive government, we could have negotiated, coordinated that so that does not bring attention. Secondly, we have seen clear calls coming from the host community. We could have responded to that. Thirdly, we have seen a close appeal from the pastoralists to rescue because the population we're in now still cattle defines the economy. So for me, everything that if you ask me from a clean and honest national heart, our state need to take responsibility. And our state authorities at various levels, national and state level, need not to demonize a particular identity of a community, need to treat people equally, and they need to be proactively in minimizing frictions that lead to the level. Because the proliferation of small arms in the hands of South Sudanese is beyond the imagination. And us having such culture or such attitudes among ourselves that any slight disagreement will eventually attack is a real problem. And this is what has made us to lose the identity we're in. So for me, my appeal is that government need to be, all of us who are in this platform, we're seeking a concrete, evident, factual-based information from the government to clarify what we're going among us in our various platforms debate so that we have a concrete information on that. And I think also it's a high moment for us to give our community a chance to mitigate. For example, as the community was saying, they're already in Jebel Gordon, they're moving. I've seen their scuttles in Jebel Gordon. I've been there on the ground. I've seen it. The movement have started. Of course, the movement is not be like smooth like the way how they come, because when they are coming, they are dropped by trucks, but now they're going on footing, not trucks to take it back like previously. And also ongoing, they need to have access to water. Now there's water, they can easily go. But we need to help also people who want to radicalize the return by telling them, no, don't go. Don't return, or don't be this, or even if they say we want to stay there, no, don't stay here, go immediately. Those particular praises are things that we need to have a dialogue among ourselves. My only fear is that if we start using violence as an option of resolving our disputes, the consequences of violence that it will have on us, when it comes to realize it, while it is already too late, that it will take us ages to repair the damages. So we better, before we commit any damages that we can't repair in the shortest period of time, let us stop it and let us see the best way we can go about it. Because there's a quite number of people who are powerful, who are preventing what you call a durable solution to this crisis. For what interest, I don't know. Whether they are behind those individuals who are raising alarms, I don't know. But normally I used to say there's a quite number of influential people who want to prevent South Sudanese from coexisting peacefully, because they use the powers of their offices to deny people not to have the culture of dialogue and talking among themselves to peacefully coexist as South Sudanese. That's really my answer to your question. But I feel the pain as I'm on the ground. I can see it with my own eyes. I can see the pain, and I can see communities paying price. They pay a price that is equal, not a price of one particular group, but all of them pays equal price from the consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Madit. Is it okay if I can add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yakini. What I'm trying to add, because I've been running the ideas through my head, and I'm trying to figure out, what is actually happening in Eastern Equatoria. Because I'm from Dinka, and we have maybe over 50% of the cows of Dinka they are in Lagos State. So what I'm trying to say is this: usually, cattle camps they have leaders. We call them Banywood. Banywood is the person responsible about any issue that come with the cattle, whether problems among the people in the area or among the people in the cattle camp themselves. So I just want to, has it been any discussion brought up among the cattle keepers and the local area about the issue before this incident? Has it been some discussion happening back then? That's number one. Number two, has a local government, starting from the commission. The commissioner usually is the one who is responsible about anything to do with environmental in the area. Have they ever been noticing the issue and thought about drafting a solution to this new problem came in the region? Because it's like something not Eastern Equatoria are not accustomed to. It's just a new problem. Definitely, government will see it as a problem and sit down and figure out a way how to deal with this issue before even we are safe. Has it been noticed that the local government has taken initiative to draft a solution to this problem, or at least to predict a potential problem from these new people going to the region? And how was it discussed? And what did they do in the last two incidents as their effort not to stop this kind of a problem in the region? Thank you.
If I can answer you, I don't know whatever the coincidence is. I'm one of the person who work closely with these issues of farmers and pastoralists. I've worked in Western Baharaghazali State, WOW. And in WOW, we initiated something called Marialbai Agreement. Marialbai Agreement is what you have said, is that there's normally a prior dialogue on migration of cattle. And the prior dialogue, from my experience in communities where I work in such practices, is that the prior dialogue for migration is two level. There's a one prior the beginning of farming season for the farmers. They pick up a discussion so that to define the time of harvest where the cattle can't come. And there's a pre-migration dialogue that when the harvest, all farmers have harvested their farms, now they can tell, come, and this is the route you to use. And in that, normally they identify things like beehives, water points, fishing points that they don't want to clash over it. That's what happened. This has not happened in Eastern Equatoria. And that's what people like us who have been moving to the ground to promote that, let us have this. That's one thing I'd like to tell you. But of course, one of the things that has come out quickly is that when the migration of the cattle, the influx of the cattle are coming from Jongole to Eastern Equatoria, where we don't have a prior dialogues, like what I've said, like the Marialbai Agreement, the immediate trend that takes up is that why this huge influx of cattle? Then there's an interpretation of the influx of the cattle. One of it is land grabbing, taking over the land, controlling our land, occupation of our land. Those phrases came up and take a strong dominance because there's no counter for that. And the counter for that could have been the dialogues that happened that would like to raise it up, that has happened as a challenge to our communities in Eastern Equatoria and our communities in Jongole. And immediately as people like us, when we pick the dialogue, you start getting influential people coming in with sentiments that actually make the meaning of a dialogue couldn't go further. That's a gap. If you see the consequence not happening, you may ask yourself why we don't experience similar consequences in Western Baharaghazal, where Western Baharaghazal, some parts are farmers. Why not experience such deadly? Simply because there's a dialogue. Here, there's no dialogue that was taken up. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses of the state is that when incident happen like this, the states like to make political statements only. We need you to reconcile, we need to live together, and then political visit of top officials, V8s running around here and there with some bodyguards, people go and eat, people sing songs of the SPLA Day of the Liberation, and that's the end up like that. Concrete sitting down of who do we define in which level of the government to play in deterring violence is not there. These are some of the gaps. And that's what sometimes person like me, when I go to the ground, is to really find answers to the question you have raised. So that when I raise my argument, I raise my argument with concrete facts, with concrete evidence. And if I get an opportunity of providing a recommendation, I provide a practical action-oriented recommendation. So for me, that's a gap that is existing in Eastern Equatoria. And one of the things that have taken a big role, it is also this question of social media argument that is going on and giving interpretation of what is happening is a bit badly. Because when the cattle herders were coming, one of the first things we tried to raise is that there's a need to engage with the leadership of the cattle camp herders to avoid any human rights or any abusive action against the host community, so that we don't experience, because it's not new. We have experienced similar incidents 2013, 2003, 2005 in Western Equatoria. We don't repeat the same experience. And the best way is embracing dialogue. But people who take responsibility at the various level of the government, and sometimes people like us who want to promote dialogue, were given leveling that are negative levelings. Some of the people you can receive, like as I'm speaking with you, I receive from different side of communities threatening messages of what I'm expressing. But as a nationalist, I feel I have a role to play until I die. I have a civic role to play to make sure that our communities peacefully coexist. So your question that you have raised, it's actually identify the gaps that is existing on the ground, and the gaps that have weakened the role of the state in asserting rule of law that will make our communities peacefully coexist together. So for me, right now, the best, if you ask me, in the upcoming meeting of the president and the governor and the commission of Magui and the executive administrator of Nimule, what is the focus? For me, the focus have to be on the issues you raised in your question. How do we promote dialogue? How do we minimize confrontation? How do we instill discipline among the cattle herders? And we are aware that they're coming, they're going back. When are they going back? How are they going back? What their safety, their security on the way going back? Because nobody wants to live in somebody's land, even to be genuine to ourselves. And we agree on a timeline, how is this going to go? And also, we try to tell the cattle herders how to behave the host community. We tell the host community how to behave the cattle herders. If we can have that spirit of the dialogue, we can find a best way of resolving these disputes. But I think we're so much obsessed that a small dispute that merge among us, gun is the solution to it, which for me, it's something unwanted at this particular moment, after 21 years of loss of millions of lives of people because of our struggle for independence. So for me, what you raise is a gap. And personally, these are areas that we're working on as an organization, is to really push the government to take responsibility. Because if the government takes responsibility, I don't think anybody is stubborn to responsibility of the government. And the government must take responsibility by embracing the truth, by working with both communities, by seeing amicable and mutual position that we believe our citizens will enjoy as a citizen of this country, as citizens that are identified with the ideal of South Sudan. Yes, that's what I would like to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
I had a follow-up question, but I'm gonna let Abuna come first and then I come back.
Okay, so we are running out of time. Abuna, go ahead and let me give you this few seconds. A minute. Abuna Meyer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have a follow-up question to Edmund, but I was so interested to listen to him as one of the official government in Eastern Equatoria. So the only thing that I'm kind of concerned about regarding this kind of issue is the issue regarding the movement is going on in Eastern Equatoria, in and outside the diaspora. And that movement regarding forming the National Guard. So the National Guard now is responsible to protect Eastern Equatoria and not the government of South Sudan. The National Guard now is the one who can guide and protect the Eastern Equatoria, even from NAD? Or the question is it NAD, National Guard, working together against the cattle owner? If that one is the one is happening in the Eastern Equatoria, then what is the take of the government of Eastern Equatoria regarding this? And what is the take between Eastern Equatoria and government of Jonglei? Because the two governments are in the same government that they run the country for. Please, can you enlighten me? Can you enlighten me? Because we are very confused right now whether the country is going to be protected by any community can raise its own militia to protect themselves. And if that's the case, then where is the government of Eastern Equatoria and where is the government of Jonglei? Thank you.
Thank you, Abuna. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's why in the beginning I was saying I wish the call made by President for the Eastern Equatorial State Governor Luis Lobonglo to be in Juba should also take into account the participation of the governor of Jongole and the governor of Central Equatoria, because remember, this situation is engulfing 3 states in this particular discussion. And I think that's where the questions that respond to some of these calls that we have seen that there's a calls of movement should come from that particular triangle. So I think for me, it's a question of when you bring in the governors of Eastern Equatoria and the governor of Jongole and the governor of Central Equatoria, we can find an amicable solution to that, so that at least the leveling that we have shouldn't be leveling that at the end of the day will cause consequences on other communities or level other communities to pay consequences. That I think for me, and of course, governors are chairpersons of security committees, that they will have the legitimacy to provide the right answers to the questions we're raising here. Because as I said, I was on the ground, I was moving on the ground, and tomorrow still I'll be on the ground, moving on the ground. And the aim is really to clarify and to identify something like that. And so that also we can have a clear, accurate information of who, like what they say, people are confused. Up to now, even myself, if you ask me to zero a concluding position, it's not easy because Eastern Equatorial State Governor described them as Murule, while Jongole or Bor community leaders say these are youth who are from Eastern Equatoria who are mobilized and armed to attack them. So, and also there's this praise of rebels in Nimule. So for me, still we need the governors, and specifically the governor of Eastern Equatoria, to provide us accurate answer. So this accurate answer, it clears the doubts. And once we have the clear answer, that puts us in the pathway of seeking what is called durable solution of what we have seen happening on the ground. Because as I said, there's a disaster on the ground. If you go and see it for yourself, it's something that even if you hate somebody, you don't want to see something like that happening. It's inhuman. It's not something that helping us in that. But of course, the biggest responsibility really goes to our government officials. They need to be proactive. They need to take responsibility. They need to use the rule of law to discipline our communities in the way how sometimes they behave, and they need to control influence that may be coming to build a new culture among our communities, culture of violence. So that's what I would like to provide as an answer to your question. But I think for me, the most outcome is the meeting of the president with the governor of Eastern Equatoria. But I really advocate that also I need to see the governor of Jongole and the governor of Central Equatoria being part and parcel of that meeting. Though I know the president may have a meeting, closed door meeting with the leadership of Eastern Equatoria, both at level of governor, commissioner, and executive director of Nimule. But I think still governor of Central Equatoria, because Central Equatoria will be affected on the movement, and even the governor of Jongole, where are they in the safety of the communities that come from Jongole? So for me, that's the answer I'll provide for your questions. And as I said, being on the ground, witnessing what's happening, it's really challenging. And I think that's the answer that I'd like to provide, that it's good for us to take responsibility, and for us to take responsibility with the respect of human values, so that we find amicable solution that respond to the problems. That's my answer to your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Abraham, if you have a follow-up for 1 minute, you can go ahead.
Thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Yakini, for your time. Now, as I told you earlier, I'm from Lagos State, and way community. And it for somebody in Lagos State would be like, it sounds strange. Why? Because in Lagos State, we have two places we keep cattle during the rainy season and during the dry season. Now, when somebody in Lagos State, when you tell him, well, your cattle enter the farms, which is very rare for us there. We live in savannas in Toy by thousands. So everybody knows cows should be that place. In the winter time and during the rain season, we come closer to cities, but not too close. At least 3-5 mile radius from the residents and farms. So what I wanted to do, you said you were going to be in the meeting that will be held in the next few days. If it's possible, would you be able to bring us back? Number one, we want to know who are these cattle keepers in that area, in Magui or in Eastern Equatorial General, if it's possible. That's number one. Number two, why are they there from the first place? Why are they there? And in which season? Because our cows they're herd by season. In which season they're there? Are they residing there, or they come seasonally, or they were passed by, or they were passing by? That's number two. Number three, I'd like to know, when the first time this cow came into the region, what was the first reaction of local communities? Because even in Bargazal, these kind of issues are not dealt with by the government. It's dealt through cattle camp leaders and the local area leaders. So what were kind of action were taken in the beginning when they start seeing cattle camps are moving into the area? Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. If won't go ahead and answer that, and then we can. Mute yourself.
Yeah, you can remove him, Adida.
Okay. Mute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the network is a bit disturbing, but I think I will provide him on Tuesday answers to those questions, though I have some of the answers to those questions. These cattle herders are mainly from Bor, and for the first time they have come in that such big number to Magui. They have never ever been there before, and there's no prior dialogue about their coming. So some of these things I'll provide them after the Tuesday's meeting to provide him the answer. But I've taken his questions. On Tuesday, I'll provide answers to his questions that he have raised. So I think that's my answer I can provide for you, though I have answers right now because of time. But on Tuesday, I'll give details to his questions that I've raised, and also the identity, at least the identity of the perpetrators. By Tuesday, I might have accurate answer. As I say, I'm traveling back forth between Juba and Nimule, Juba, Mugali, Juba, and Moli, Juba, Nimule. I've been doing a lot of groundwork there to generate data that to provide to South Sudanese population or the public in general.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yakini. Thank you for the BOS who are in Clubhouse. Thank you, thank you, Abuna Meyer, and those of you who are in Facebook. Thank you so much. And I will see you back again, Mr. Yakin, on Tuesday. We will be having another show to bypass the meeting between the president, governor, and commissioner. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful night, morning, evening. May God bless you all. May God bring peace between these two communities. Thank you.